All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Sail Through the Standards, Ohio. My name is Jan Moody, and I'm excited to be here today with all of you. Thank you for taking the time to join us live. This is going to be a really exciting half hour. I want to say that I am joined in the room today by my colleague, Ileana Betancourt. And then also on the line is John Chen, and we will be working together to make sure that all of your questions get answered and that when you leave here today, you have all the information that you were hoping to get. We also have two really great panelists today, and their names are Julie Soley and Ashley Whitmer. They are both teachers in Ohio, and they have some really great information to share. So stay tuned for their featured presentations. Before I pass things off to Julie and Ashley, there's just a few housekeeping items that I wanted to go over, and I wanted to make everybody aware of our plan today. So first, I will be giving a little introduction that includes an overview of Edulastic and an overview of Ohio Air and the wonderful resources on Edulastic that are available to you all. Then we're going to dive into our featured presentations from Julie and Ashley. And then lastly, at the end, we're going to have a question and discussion time where we really can get all of your question answered and then make sure that we can open this up for everybody to be involved through the chat. So that's a nice little segue. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little chat icon. I encourage you all to use this throughout the entire webinar to add any commentary or ask any questions that you may have. So it looks like everybody has actually been already using this. So welcome, everybody. It looks like we have people here from all over Ohio, which is really great. I saw Louisville City Schools. Jenny is from an e-school in Ohio. Michelle is from Wayne County. And Sheila as well. Lots of people here from all over Ohio. So that's really great. So I encourage you all to introduce yourself in the chat and continue to share where you're tuning in from and any other information that you would like everyone to know as well. Also at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little Q&A bubble. I encourage you to use this to ask official questions throughout the webinar. When you use the Q&A bubble to ask a question, it gets directed either to myself or Ileana or John, and that way we make sure that it doesn't get lost in the chat. And we either will type you a response or we'll answer it live. We are expecting a pretty big audience today, and with that comes a lot of questions. So if for whatever reason we aren't able to get to everyone's questions, I will make sure that I follow up with you via email after the webinar. So sit back, relax, and thank you so much for joining us today. So based off of the poll that you all took at the beginning, it looks like a lot of people are brand new to Edulastic. So with that, I'm just going to give a little bit of background information on what Edulastic is. So Edulastic is an online digital assessment platform for students, teachers, and districts. There are over 30 different question types and over 35,000 items in the Edulastic certified item bank. All of those publicly shared items you can use in your class today, tomorrow, whenever. There are over 30,000 publicly available assessments that other teachers have created that you can either use as is or duplicate and edit and totally make them your own. Something that teachers always share with us that they love about Edulastic are these standards tracking and mastery reports and the really powerful data that is available to you on Edulastic. And I think that Julie and Ashley are going to share a little bit on that later and how they use those data reports to adjust their instruction and make sure that they are catering to fit all of their students' needs. This last bullet point is what today's webinar really focuses on, and that's that Edulastic really mimics the look and feel of state tests. My next slide kind of shows a little bit of an example of this, but I believe that Julie and Ashley will talk about this as well. But that's some of the feedback that we get from teachers is that when students take an assessment on Edulastic, it feels like they're taking a state test. So once testing day rolls around and it's the real thing, they've already, they're used to the tech enhanced items and they're used to taking an exam online through Edulastic. Again, for all of you who are new today, I want to point out that today's webinar is going to focus on using Edulastic to prepare for state tests. And because of that, we won't necessarily be going over those kind of basic introductory things to Edulastic. But that being said, we recently had an Edulastic 101 webinar with John Chen, who is online right now. And he did a really nice job walking us through all of the great things that are available to you in an Edulastic teacher account. So I think that Ileana can share the link to that right now. And then I also wanted to mention that we will have another live Edulastic 101 webinar on March 12th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So for those of you who are new to Edulastic, I really encourage you to tune into that. Keep an eye on your email. We will be announcing that officially shortly, but I wanted to let you all know ahead of time since you're joining us live for this. So a little bit of information about Ohio State tests in that they're given in the 4 main subjects. So that's ELA, science, math, and social studies. It's an online exam, which is very pertinent to today's webinar because Edulastic is an online platform that really helps teachers prepare their students for this online state tests. And then they're given in the spring, which is relatively soon, as all of you educators know. These 2 screenshots are what I was mentioning earlier. This is an example of a state test question that students might see on the Ohio State test. And this is what a similar question looks like on Edulastic. So I wanted to put this in here so that you all are able to see kind of the similarity between the 2, especially with this little math calculator, this math tool right here. Before I hand it off, I wanted to point out that there are Ohio released items on Edulastic available to you. And to find these, you log into Edulastic or create an account if you're brand new. You go to the assessment library, which is this little stack of books right here on the left. And then you would filter Edulastic certified and search Ohio Air. These are great and you can edit them, duplicate them, and really use them in any way that you want in your class to make sure that you are preparing your students adequately. And all of these were released by the Ohio Department of Education. So we have an Edulastic Innovator team, and that is actually what Julie and Ashley are a part of. And we recently asked them what their favorite thing is about using Edulastic to prepare for state tests. These are some of the answers that we got, and I thought that these are really great, and I wanted to share them with you all today. I especially liked Kara's answer. She said, the technology enhanced questions, the ability to have more than one reading passage, and to include images or video as text, that I can create my own questions or use already created ones. There's nothing else like it online. And I think that some of the panelists might mention this later, but I especially like how she pointed out images, videos, text, and then TEIs as well, those technology enhanced items. There's really just so much that you can do on Edulastic, and I thought that all of these answers summed that up nicely. So at this time, Ashley, I invite you to turn on your audio and video, and I will pass things over to you. So welcome to Ashley. She is an assessment and data analyst in Riverside, Ohio. And you can connect with her on Twitter via her handle right here. And we're so excited to have you here today. So thank you, Ashley.
Hi, thanks, Jan. Hi, everybody. Yes, I am the assessment and data analyst for our district, or for Mad River Local Schools, which is just outside Dayton. I was a 7th grade language arts teacher for 12 years, and I used Jelastic for the past 4 in that role. Now as a district-wide data analyst, I use data that comes in from all of our buildings to kind of figure out and help teachers out. Just a little bit about our kind of Edulastic journey before we look at some of my favorite parts of Edulastic and how to prepare for the test. About 4 years ago, I was looking for something to solve a problem in the fact that I had a lot of students in my class that either qualified for read aloud on IEPs or just needed things read aloud on assessments, and there was only one me. And so I did some research and found that Edulastic allows passages and questions to be read aloud, which was what first drew me to the program. But the more I used it, the more I was like, this is really cool. It looks very, very similar to the Ohio State test. And what we've discovered is that even if kids have been taking these tests for years, people may never have taught them exactly what they can do and how to look at it. So now we use Edulastic for our curriculum assessments from grades 2 to 8. And so we're really working on getting kids used to reading text online and answering questions the way they'll look on the test. Edulastic is actually the only test prep that I used when I was in the classroom, and it was more effective than back when I used to stop everything a few weeks before the test and prep and prep and prep. Next slide, please, Jan. Okay, so we found again that students really needed to understand the format of the assessment. And there's a lot of different kinds of questions that can really only be replicated on an online program. And so if you look here, I have some of my favorite things that we're able to do with these tech-enhanced questions in Edulastic. So Jan referenced the passages. So there's passage-based questions where students can read on one side of the screen and answer questions on the other side, just like they will on the Ohio State test. Jan also mentioned you can have more than one passage over here, which is really interesting because, as those of you know that have watched an Ohio State test before, sometimes students have to use more than one text to answer questions. And then over here on the other side, I have one of the more interactive types of questions, the matching, where students can drag from a bank. There are actually a few different question types like this where they can drag and drop and move things around. And especially if you're preparing for a science math test, those kind of questions can be really useful. Next slide. Just a closer look at the passages. Since I was a language arts teacher, this is really my kind of focus area. Kids can use some of the same things they can use on the Ohio State test. So they can highlight, as there's an example on the slide, they can highlight multiple colors. They can flag a question and go back to it. So if they try to submit the assessment at the end, it'll tell them that they've flagged a question. Next slide. Julie is going to talk about some of the reports that she uses as well, and there are a lot of them on Edulastic, but there are a couple that I find the most useful as a teacher in the classroom. And one of them is just the live dashboard. So as students are taking an assessment, you can see how they're doing and what questions they're getting right or wrong. This is actually screenshotted from present mode, so you can see that all of our students don't have real names. Sometimes I liked to project this while kids were taking it, so they like to see the colors go up and down. It's kind of some kind of direct feedback for them without using real student names. If you look at the bar graphs up at the top, it's really easy to tell that we have a problem with question 2. So it's something we should definitely take a look at on the assessment. Why did students miss question 2? And to take a closer look at that, next slide. You can also, this is a different way to view the same information. And you can see what kids got wrong and what their wrong or right answer was. I particularly like this view if I'm entering things in a grade book, but I can actually click on each kid and see their assessment individually. One of the things that we noticed when we first started doing these online assessments, you see a lot of kids miss question 2. You'll see that it has this TEI, which tells you that it was a multiple part question. So they might have had to answer part A and part B. We've noticed very, very frequently that students skip part B. And if they're skipping part B on an Edulastic assessment, they're probably skipping part B on the real thing at the end of the year. So we have noticed that this is particularly helpful for kind of cluing kids into, you have to make sure that if you see that part A, that you answer part B. Next slide. And this last report, we use standards-based grading in our school through 3rd grade. And I think even if you don't, even in the upper grades, like where I used to be, this report card feature is nice because it breaks down not only what they got right and wrong on this assessment, but then what standard it's linked to, and gives them kind of a mastery or not mastery way to look at things. I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. All right. We had a lot of compliments come in through the chat. Yeah, I wanted to give a quick reminder that if you are sharing in the chat, please have it set to all panelists and attendees so that everybody's able to see it. And at this time, Julie, welcome. I am going to invite you. I see you have your audio and video on, so that's perfect. Julie is a 5th grade teacher in Dublin, Ohio, and we are excited to have her here today. So Julie, I'm going to turn my audio off and then say next slide, and I will click on over to the next slide.
All right, great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah, sounds good. Thank you for checking.
Great. All right. So actually I teach in Westerville, but I'm from Dublin. That's where I live. My kids go to Dublin, so I'm pretty familiar with the school district as well. But so I've taught in Westerville for 2 years. The last 3 years I was a ELA teacher in Springfield. That's how I kind of got introduced to Edulastic, just something I was dabbling in when I first got into the district. But the last year I was there, our entire district went to pre and post assessments using Edulastic. So we were using Edulastic pretty consistently, multiple times a year to pre and post test our kiddos and to get them really familiar with the testing format. So when I went to Westerville last year, I kind of just started using it as well because I really enjoyed the feedback I was getting. Just kind of the ease of grading really helped me, and just kind of preparing my kids for the test. So I've been using it right around 4 years or so, and it's just every year it just gets better and better. All the technology is more enhanced, and it's just more aligned to what we really need and what we're using on a day-to-day. So, all right, next slide. All right, so I know we always say we don't want to teach to the test, but our main goals is to get our kids really familiar with the format that they're going to be using, so that when they actually go to take the test, they're really able to focus on, showing their knowledge and their skills. So a lot of what we do is we teach a lot of the test vocabulary so they can be really familiar just with the verbiage when they come across it. On the left-hand side, I just went through some of the release test material, and those were a lot of the words that were used in a lot of the questions. Some of which are standards-based, like theme, but a lot of them are not. So sometimes you really have to teach the kids exactly what they mean, because they come across a question that they're trying to answer and they're unsure of exactly, what's expected of them. So they really have no clue how to answer it. So we use a lot of the testing vocabulary consistently through the year. And, we teach a lot of what it means so that they are familiar with it. And then on the right side is just a chart I pulled. I went to a Smeckens webinar last year, and one of the things they reiterated was the fact that kids really need to know a lot of the words that are being used. So that was a chart I pulled from their website. I'm pretty sure the link is on the slide, but there was just, a ton of different words that could be used to really help them become more familiar with testing questions. As far as that goes, the testing vocabulary is pretty important to our test prep in general. Okay, next slide.
Sorry, I clicked on that link that you are referencing.
Sorry about that.
Okay, is that the next slide?
All right, great, yeah. So this is just something we pull from the ODE website, and it just gives a breakdown of kind of the testing questions that they're required to do for ELA. It's pretty even split between literary and informational texts, as well as points that go along with it. And then the writing portion is a pretty huge portion of their overall testing point score. So we use this. My curriculum coach can pull the scores from the previous year and actually see what the kiddos scored for each question. A lot of what we look for is the writing portion specifically, as well as questions that are worth more than 2 points. Kind of like what Ashley alluded to, those 2-part questions really get the kids. They don't scroll down, so they miss part B, which doesn't allow them to answer the question completely. So one of the testing questions on Edulastic is an A and B question, which is fantastic. So we really look and see how many, percentage of kids that actually miss those 2-part questions. And we make sure that, we focus on paying attention to the whole question and make sure we're scrolling down to make sure we didn't miss anything. So we use that a lot. When I build my test in Edulastic, I make sure that I mimic and what's very similar to the release test questions, so that they're familiar with the format, they're familiar with the verbs, and I can track all of my data and kind of see what trends I'm seeing through Edulastic. The reports, like Ashley had pulled, are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, you can pull them per question, per standard. You can look at each student and you can track their data over the course of the year. So you can really hone in on what the kiddos are struggling with or what their strengths are. And you can really just kind of tweak what you're doing, and you can kind of individualize it as necessary. So those data reports are really crucial in my teaching and preparing. Okay, next slide, please. So this is just an example of something I pulled, and this just shows one assessment, and it kind of goes through performance by standard, and it really shows which standards my kids struggled with. So I can really go in and focus on, what they need more work on. And then I can even dive a little bit deeper and see what question it was. And I can see which student struggled with what. So it really allows me to individualize what I'm doing and, refocus my teaching. Okay, next slide. So this is the state testing rubric. We go over this pretty consistently. Writing is a pretty big struggle in my school, and just within my own classroom, a lot of my kids really struggle with it. And just pulling a lot of our data from last year's test, it definitely shows that there are a lot of areas of weakness. So a lot of what I use is the state testing rubric for a lot of my writing assignments just throughout the year. We go over it, and it's very wordy for them. So we kind of break it down and we look at each part and we try to put it into our own words so that the kids actually know what purpose, focus, and organization means, or evidence and elaboration. And they're really familiar by the time April rolls around what a rubric is and what it looks like, and what is expected of them. You can attach the rubrics to the Edulastic questions, which is really nice. So a lot of what I do to prepare is sometimes we will just only focus on a writing response. So we'll do maybe a side-by-side essay, and then they'll have to respond using a multi-paragraph essay, and they're able to actually look at the rubric and see what's expected of them. And we kind of build up from the beginning of the year, focusing on like one paragraph, and we just keep on building through the year to increase their stamina as well as their skills. One of the big things is the fact that it is a multi-paragraph essay. I know 4th and 5th grade, they have to write multi-paragraphs. So one of the issues is like the conventions is only 2 points, but if you look at previously graded assignments that are released, if they do not write enough, they will automatically lose 1 or 2 points just because there wasn't enough to assess their actual conventions. So making sure that they're writing enough information that it makes sense, but putting them on a time limit so they know that they're on a crunch. So, getting them in there to focus on exactly what they need to do is really important, but it takes practice and prep. So that's what we try to do throughout the year. And in the process, they're mastering their standards as well. So it's not just teaching to the test at the end of the year. They're really mastering a lot of skills. Okay.
Thank you so much. That was really great. And thank you for bringing in all that information about the Ohio State test too. I think everybody really enjoyed that. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start my video. And while the questions are rolling in, there's just a few more things that I wanted to go over. And I know we have limited time left, so I'm going to go quickly and then we'll get back to questions. I wanted to point out that we have an Edulastic Resource Center. And if you ever have any questions about Edulastic, this is typically a really good place to go. Beyond this, we also have a support team at Edulastic, and the email for that is support@edulastic.com. I think that Ileana can share that in the chat. And you always can reach out to them with any questions or feedback that you may have. Also, as part of these live webinars, we have a swag giveaway for people who attend live. And today, our winner is Kim Tarango. So congratulations, Kim, and thank you so much for joining us live today. I have your email from your registration, so I will be sending you an email to figure out if you would like either a t-shirt or a laptop sleeve. And then for everybody else who is here live, even if you didn't win the swag package, you are being entered into a greater pool of all of the live attendees, and you have the opportunity and the chance to win an Edulastic Teacher Premium account. So keep an eye on your email. Awesome. And then I lastly just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and please stay in touch with us via our social channels. We are really active on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and our handle is @Edulastic. So thank you so much. And now we can head back to the question time. And I saw that there were a few questions that came in. The first is, and Julie and Ashley, I think that both of you could give your input on this. Michelle said, how often do you use Edulastic in your classroom?
I use Edulastic for most of my testing in all subjects for the most part, probably about 90% of the time. So whenever I'm giving a normal assessment for any of my subject areas, I'll use Edulastic, including math. So it's a great tool for just general testing. Sometimes we'll do a couple extra as far as like the writing I was talking about. So that might be, you know, every other week we might do a practice response, but you know, I just use it as a part of my testing process just normally.
Yeah, I would say once or twice a week, just as a normal testing option.
Awesome. Thank you for explaining that. And then I also wanted to touch on, Corey mentioned that he wanted more clarification on how to find Ohio released items on Edulastic. So here is an Edulastic account, and I would go to the assessment library here. Right now it is filtered to some other things. So we're going to get rid of this. I typically like to search in the Edulastic certified item bank, but I don't think that that is fully necessary. Yes, zoom in more is the request.
There we go.
Okay, see that? Can you see that better?
Yeah, it's a little worked.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. So yeah, type in Ohio Air into the search bar up here in the library, and all of these will populate. There's a couple pages of them, and then you can click into them, either assign them as is, you can preview them this way, or you can create a new version of them to really fit the needs of your own class. All right, any other questions? When creating your own question. Okay, I see there's a few more rolling in. We have one, is it possible to merge two tests together? John, do you mind answering that? I'm not sure actually the best way to go about that, or maybe Ileana does.
We already answered it in the Q&A.
Oh, great. Answered. Perfect. John says the way to accomplish this is to jot down the question IDs from one test and then search for them. And so by doing that, you're able to then combine all of those questions into one awesome assessment. And then Ileana wants to know if we answered Corey's question. So Corey, let us know. And unfortunately, we are getting really close to the end of our 30 minutes here. Andrew says, thank you, John. And like I said at the beginning, I have a record of all of these questions, and I'll make sure to follow up via email with any ones that we don't hit today. Okay, yeah, here's another great question for the panelists. Thank you, Ileana. Matt says, when creating your own questions, is there a pool of text to pull from, or do you literally start from scratch? So Julie and Ashley, if you want to share how you create your own questions or pull them from Edulastic.
Well, we have curriculum assessments that we've put on Edulastic to use, so you can start from scratch. But there are a lot of options in the bank that have passages attached if you search for what works for you.
Yeah, sometimes I create my own, and I'll also use some of the release testing material as practice. But you can pull a lot of questions and passages just from the bank, either ones that have been created by other teachers or, you know, ones that are release test material. So it really just depends what my focus is at the time, what I'm working on.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. And then the last question that I see right now that we can address is Linda asks, is it possible to randomize the questions so that students are not on the same question at the same time? And yes, we do have a shuffle question and shuffle answer feature, and that's in our premium version of Edulastic. All right, so we have reached the end of our 30 minutes. So I will make sure I follow up with everybody via email whose question we did not get to today. But I want to say thank you to Julie and Ashley for taking the time and sharing how you use Edulastic to prepare for Ohio State tests. And thank you to everybody for taking the time to join us live. I really appreciate it.